heart goes out to all the family members and friends that have been involved. I'd like to also start off by saying thank you very much for inviting me to participate in your Abuse Awareness Day. This is always a difficult aspect for us to talk about. However, it is very much needed. It's very much important for us to discuss this, as hard as it may be, because we need to come to a place in time where, as our dear sister said, we need to end this now, right? We need to end the issues of abuse and violence and pain that we inflict upon one another. Thank you, Patricia Balgin from the Women's Ministry, and thank you, Judy, as well. So let's start. The sermon for today, I entitled it, Who Am I? My reason for entitling it was for various reasons. I've worked in shelters with women for many years. And one of the things that we often do is have support groups within the shelters, and we have support groups in the community for women who have not transitioned from the shelter and coming into, has transitioned from their homes coming into the shelter. And that's okay. There's a misconception that, women always have to flee their home. It really depends on what stage or journey that they're going through. But while in there, one of the things that we would do when we're facilitating groups is really talk and reflect not only on the struggles that the women have gone through, but identifying who they are. And this is something that I want you to really listen to as we go through this process, because in order to help others, we need to know who we are. We need to understand what our abilities are, and we need to be prepared before we could move forward. So remember who you are, what you stand for. You can often get lost. You can lose a sense of self. You may lose confidence in yourself. You could lose self-esteem. And often enough, many of the women become depressed. They become very lonely. They feel that they're the only ones that are experiencing this devastation of abuse towards them. So who are you? The scripture reading that we discussed as well, that was shared, and thank you very much for doing that. The first one is 1 John or chapter 3 and verse 1. And I just want to reiterate that again. How great is the love that the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. The reason the world does not know is that it did not know him. So who am I? I am a child of God. Who are we? We are children of God. Please do not ever forget that. We are of royalty. And when we act and respond to people, we need to do that very intentional. You need to say it, because you will be treated as such. Okay, so who am I? Who are we? We are all children of God. And then chapter 2, or the second scripture reading, it's taken from Psalms 46, verse 1. And it says, God is our refuge and our strength, and ever-present help when we're in trouble. So one of the things that we often encourage the women to know is that you're not alone. You're not alone. And when we get together in groups and women are able to see each other and talk with each other and reflect with each other and cry with each other and support each other, that's when we realize that we're not alone. As Christians, we have never been alone. We understand that we have a God, we have a Savior who has told us that we are his children. So therefore, he has also promised us that he is our refuge and our strength. And we need to hold on to that because that is a promise. And when you have that just embedded within you, it gives you the ability to move forward. And you're taking these baby steps as we move forward, one step at a time. So when we are going through a storm, I have a PowerPoint that I'm not sharing with you, but in the beginning, there's the ocean or the sea that's right there, and it's a storm that's happening. And in the middle of it, there's a lighthouse, and the lights are on. Ocean or the sea that's right there, and the light is on. It's there. It is allowing us to know that there is something there to support us. What is there to support us? It is God, who is our lighthouse. He's our refuge and our strength. And he is that constant reminder that we are not alone. I have been, as I said, given the privilege to work with survivors of violence, of sexual assault, violence involving partner in intimate relationships, and those that are also struggling with human trafficking. I call it a privilege because you have to earn their trust. You have to earn the trust before you are given permission to support them. So please also keep that in your mind. We don't rush people. We support them, but we also have to allow them to know that we are there for them, right? We have to embrace them. We have to learn to listen and not do a lot of talking, but really and sincerely focus and listen on individuals that are struggling, that are in pain. So earn their trust, because once you earn their trust, they will allow you in. These are our vulnerable groups, our vulnerable sectors in society who had to deal with ongoing issues of abuse, whether it's verbal put down, physical assaults. They have been victimized, brutalized, but not broken. Their lives, the lives of their children, their lives of their family members, people who are close to them, people who are supportive of them, are often turned upside down. So through the sermon, I will talk about lived experiences of women in the shelters in the community that I personally have come in contact with. Outside of their names, I will be telling their stories, and maybe some of you have similar stories or know someone with similar stories or experiences. These are the stories of not just people who have been abused, but I like to call them survivors. These are stories of survivors and how they have battled through that storm. But still, they remain true to who they are. So who am I? Who are you? If you're able right now to just take out a pen and a paper or your tablet, a notepad, or your phone, and just write down or verbalize. This is just a moment of reflection as we move forward. I want you to reflect and write down who you are. Or you could say it to out loud. I am a child of God. I am smart. I am beautiful. I am courageous. For the men, I am handsome. I am true to myself. I am true to others. I am helpful. I am fun. There's, please don't forget that. There are so many different ways in which we think and we feel and we react to various situations. But how can we move forward if, again, we don't know who we are? Let's talk the hard talk of domestic violence. It is common in most injuries caused towards women. And this is sad because it is common worldwide. Any country you go to, what is the most common injury that they would be recorded? And that is domestic violence towards women. And it doesn't alienate violence towards men, violence towards children, or violence toward elderly. But it's the one that's most reported. And I often wonder what the numbers or the true numbers would be regarding violence towards men. And one of the reasons why we don't know, we won't have an accurate account, is because men are often stigmatized if they are considered victimized. So they will not report it. They often don't report it. They won't report if their partner, their loved one, their wife is abusing them, minimizing them, calling them names, or hitting them, or taking away their money. That's not something, because they have been conditioned to be strong, to be the holder of the house. So as I speak, I may revert to the word woman, or I may revert to the word children, but please do not think that I am ignoring the fact that men are also victim of abuse as well. When the abuse starts, it often starts very small, not something that we even may even take note of, right? It may start off with something like a put down, like, what are you doing wrong? Or you could never get it right. And then flavored with something positive. And then it grows and it grows. It grows as the week goes on, as the month goes on, as the years goes on. To the point where, for some, it grows to the point where they lose their life. The abuse, if you think of a glass, and again, a glass, you keep on pouring water in that glass, and eventually the glass overfull and it flows over. That's how some women verbalize how they have been treated. It was little by little by little until it overflowed, and it moved from the verbal insult to the physical. And the physical part is something that we all see, so we could know something is wrong. But we don't see the emotional aspect. And we're going to talk about that and why that is so detrimental to our well-being. The one thing that we're also going to reflect on is the word power and control. So domestic violence is the willful intimidation of physical, sexual, and other abusive behavior. It's all part of what we call systemic. It's a systemic pattern of power to control the other person. It includes, as I said, the physical violence, the sexual violence, the psychological violence, the emotional abuse. and it becomes frequent as time evolves. So in front of me, I have something called the power and control wheel. And they call it a wheel because every aspect of abuse, it's like a cycle. You know, one day it could be emotional abuse, another day it will be the isolation, another day it would be name calling and blaming and minimizing. Another day it would be using children as ultimatums, or another day it might be that male privilege. Whichever it is, it's a cycle that keeps on going around. And some days when a woman is being abused so much, they don't know what's going to come after them in the following day. Because one day it may be good, everything will be fine. And another day, there's some devastation. So they go through their highs and their low, and that forms a sense of confusion, a sense of loss, and not knowing what to do. Many of the women, when we were in groups at the shelter, they would often hear from one another and they'll say things like, did they all go to the same school? Why does your story sound so much like mine? And as one woman is telling the story, another one will jump in and finish her story because she's like, wait a minute, that sounds so much like mine. It's very, very scary and heart-wrenching. It's concerning. So we're going to talk about some of the emotional abuse. I'm going to name it for you. You might be in your homes right now and start naming it as well. One of the things that I miss of being in an open environment is having the back and forth communication. Because when I am doing facilitations with large groups, having people either raising their hands or asking a question in between really helps me. But we're going to do our best and we're going to do it together. So what is emotional abuse? It's really an intent to gain, again, the power and control over someone else by using certain tactics. So you'll see or notice, or you might have heard someone saying that he or she's always yelling at me. They're always putting me down. They're calling me names. They're belittling me. There's ridicule after ridicule. They're also playing mind games. I don't know if I'm coming or going. They humiliated me in front of people, or even in my own home in front of the children or my family members. We were out for dinner and he humiliated me by just ordering my food and telling me I don't know what I want, belittling me and threatening to do harm. Does that sound familiar? There's the physical abuse. We all know what the physical abuse look like because we see it. You get hit, slapped, punched, pulled, choked, burnt, grabbing your clothes, pulling your hair. Some of the women have talked about, being dragged. And again, that is another form of humiliation, but it's causing pain on someone's physical and internal well-being. So what do we do when we see this physical pain? Because we don't see the emotional one, but we have to talk about that because that's the one that lasts for a lifetime, if not dealt with through counseling or support or talking it through with people who care about you. We have to constantly talk about how we are feeling, how we are conditioning our thoughts. What do we start thinking of ourselves? Because who we are sometimes shifts because of what people tell us. We start to forget that we are priceless, that we are precious, that we have a God that is there to be our refuge and strength, and we sometimes give up. The emotional abuse and aspect in one's life when being tormented day after day after day, it's hard to get out. It is extremely painful. And that's the one that lasts not just the longest, but has such a devastation. Because the physical abuse, that will heal, that will mend. Sometimes it leaves a scar, and that could be your reminder of where you were and where you are today, how far you've come. Let's also talk about the financial abuse. Not being allowed to work, uh, being given an allowance. Imagine given an allowance. You are an adult, you're making an income, and you're told you do not have access to this money. And for some, it may seem outrageous, but let me tell you, it has happened many times. Several women have said to me, I make my money and I have to give it to him. Or for men, they say, I have to give all my money to her. And I'm not talking about a relationship where you've made a joint agreement. That's totally different, because in some relationships, an agreement is given where both parties are going to put the money together because they have a goal. They have a mortgage or rent, they have payments, car payments, and so they have a goal. They need to bring things down. They need to put their money towards different expenditures in their home. And they also have a savings, so they know this is what we're going to do with our money. I am not talking about where there's a neutral agreement. I'm talking where your power and control is taken away from you and you are not given a choice. And please remember, in many of these homes, we seem to think that it's only impacted, or abuse only impacted, those who do not have an education, that it only impacts a certain group of people. It has an impact on whether you're white, you're Black, you're Hispanic, you're Asian. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't stop. It doesn't matter your culture. It doesn't matter your age. It doesn't matter your gender. And as far as financial disposition, it has no end because it impacts everyone. I've had women that came to me where their husbands were judge or is a judge, and they had to flee where they are to come to where I am. I've had wives where their husband are law-abiding citizens per se. They are police officers. They are, working individuals in the community that are well respected. They're dentists and they're lawyers, and they're an abundance of professionals. I have women themselves who are also professionals. And I've had women who have a very low income. And they are often all in the same room when we do groups. So there are no barriers when it comes to abuse. And it's a real eye opener for many people when they see this and they witness it, because they're surprised. Many people don't realize that they're not alone. And they think that they're the only ones being impacted by this. That's why we need to learn to look for the signs and to support our members and to support people in the community and to support our family members. So with the financial abuse, not only are you given an allowance, but this person, they're not provided the necessities of life. They are finding reasons to the abuser finds reason to take away their money from them. They may even take out a loan to help themselves, knowing that your name is on the loan. They forge your signature or your checks. They withhold funds by forcing you to beg for money. And that's just some of the financial abuse. There's also psychological abuse, which is a threat to do harm to the victim or the survivor, their children, their family, their friends, their pets, or anything of value to that person. They may threaten you that if you leave, I'm going to commit suicide. I hear that a lot. You might hear that a lot. If you leave, I'm going to commit suicide and it's your fault. If you don't stop listening to me, if you need to listen to me, and if you don't listen to me, I'm going to leave the relationship and you're going to be all by yourself and you're not going to survive and I'm not going to help you at all. I'm not going to pay you child support. If you leave, I am going to come after you. If you leave, I want you to look at that weapon on the wall. I want you to look at the weapon in the drawer. I am going to do harm to you. They will threaten the children. They may also threaten to hurt and kill you, your children, and your family member. I want to tell you of a real quick story. I know there have been in the news for last week that there was a woman found on one of the trails in Whitby. As she was taking a jog early in the morning, she never came back home. The following day, there was someone who found her, and she was beaten really badly and was taken to the hospital. Well, on Monday, I had problems with my computer, and now since working from home, I called the IT at the office and said, I'm having some problems accessing some of the programs. And so she logged in and got in access to my computer and started to help me. And once everything was done, she later said to me, Sharon, I want to tell you something. Something really devastating happened to her that she witnessed. And she was taking a walk with her neighbor. And while taking a walk, they wrapped around the block. It's about a 45-minute walk from one end to the other. And as they were heading back home, she passed an area where there's some bushes. And she noticed, or not noticed, but she heard a voice, like a groaning, painful voice. And she thought it was an animal. So she's an animal lover, and she decided to back up a little bit. So she told her neighbor, come, something is wrong. I hear something back here. So she backed up, and lo and behold, as they looked into the bushes, there was a woman crunched down on the ground, looking as though she's in pain and agony. She did not smell any alcohol. She didn't believe that there was any drugs involved. She didn't see any signs, anything on the ground. It looked as though she was just dumped there. And this worker said, Sharon, I was so shocked. I started to shake. And she took out her phone and she called the police. Of course, we don't know the rest of the story right now, but this is one of many stories that happens on our day-to-day journeys in life. And most of it we will not hear about. But let me tell you, brothers and sisters, it happens. It happens all too often. And so the more we become informed, the more we begin to realize what's going on in our community, the more we learn how to help one another, we can help reduce and eventually eliminate violence. Sexual abuse. Well, what is that? Again, any form of unwanted touching or sexual behavior. It's rape, It's engaging in sexual acts that is unwanted. And so if somebody says to you, I was touched in a way that was inappropriate or didn't feel good, because sometimes we don't have the words to articulate, it just didn't feel good, listen to them. There's also the elder abuse. So what's happening in our community? So we do know, for example, there's been a lot of our elders who have been abused in nursing homes, retirement homes. And the reason we know about it is because someone reported it. Someone took the opportunity to say, I need to put an end to this. This needs to stop. I'm going to tell someone. That's our obligation, is to talk about it, put it to light. So there's been a number of elders in our community, in our society, that are being abused. And what does that look like? Well, elder abuse first, it affects affected by abuse, or the older people, older adults are affected by abuse, often known by people that they trust, right? People that they depend on. It could be a family member, it could be a close friend, it can be someone who provides assistance in basic needs of services, or healthcare provider in an institution. Anyone that has close contacts and proximity to this person is the likeliness that can abuse this individual. In many situations of elder abuse, the abuser is dependent on the older adult for money, food, or shelter. So there's now this power and control. The elderly person have access to, and the abuser does not. So they take control and power over that person. So elder abuse, it can be a physical indicators that we need to look for. And in our congregation, there are so many seniors that we need to pay attention to. And we need to provide an outlet for them to feel safe. So if we're noticing unexplained injuries, history of accidents, untreated medical problems, under or over medicated. If you notice that they're dehydrated and they're wasting away, like they're just losing a lot of weight and it's not accounted for, it just doesn't make sense. And there's also sexual assault as well towards our elders. The psychological aspect is if you notice this elderly person seem to be really fearful and they're shaken and they just seem anxious and depressed, right? They're not talking too much, or when you come close to them, they shake, they're fearful. They're fearful of interacting. Maybe you notice that they used to come and visit often, or they would welcome you to their home and they're no longer doing that. Or if you are in a circle with this elder and the caregiver is speaking on behalf of that person and not allowing privacy, that's really concerning. Because then what happens is the elderly person becomes reluctant to talk openly. So now they withdraw from people because there's silence. The financial indicators, if they're saying, things are missing in my house, there's ongoing theft, I don't know, but there's something missing. We're often quick to assume that when our elderly people that we care for start making these statements, we start saying, I think they're beginning to lose their mind. I think that, it's the onset of Alzheimer's or dementia. We don't take time to listen, really listen to them. And I'm not dismissing that these diseases may not be happening, but something is wrong and we need to investigate what that is. Another financial indicator is forged signatures on checks. We've seen that quite a lot in our field, right? And so the banks have done a due diligence in trying to set up a system for an elderly person. But it doesn't mean that things often go the way it's supposed to go. There's an unusual or inappropriate activity going on in their bank account. So when that's happening, right, we need to wonder, like, why is this happening? My aunt, my mom, my dad, my auntie, they haven't gone out and spent anything. They don't access online to spend a lot. So who else is spending this money? Another one is when this person is forced to sign over property or execute a will. That's another indicator that we need to look out for. And when in doubt, talk to someone in confidence and say, you know what, I think something is kind of odd here. Something doesn't seem right. A lot of our elderly also are neglected. And you can notice if they look unkept in their appearance. Maybe they are inappropriate, or they're wearing clothes that are dirty, or smelling a little bit more than you would expect. If you go to their home, it's an unhealthy living condition. Maybe there's signs of infrequent bathing or lack of social contact, lack of regular medical appointments. There was an elderly woman who had one of those electronic chairs. And at the time I was working out of Bowmanville. And she was in Ajax. And she called and expressed issues of abuse in her home. And it's been going on for years. And she needed to escape. We had several conversations before she made the great escape. And I'd like to let you know about this great escape. It's still in my mind, and it's been over 20 years when this happened. But we planned a strategy. And I thought it was a good strategy. But one thing happened. She said, you know, I have several doctor's appointments, and my son just keeps on telling the doctor that I'm not well and I can't come in. I've missed 3 appointments, and I was hoping that my doctor would have figured out something is wrong and send someone to help me, but no one came. I have to get to you right away. So I said, I will send a cab for you, because you have to be patient and wait for the right time. Usually when the abuser is aware that this person is going to leave them, they become more at risk just before they leave, or even right after they leave. So we had to strategize. So the address was given, but I said, we will send a taxi. And she said, well, would the taxi be able to take my, it was a remote, it just slipped my mind. Just slipped my mind, but one of those remote devices, you know, the chairs that they just push, and you see them around in the grocery stores, or maybe a little bit up and down the streets. And I said, you know what, we'll send one of the mini buses that can come and get you, that could put all your things into. We received a call from the company that was supposed to pick her up, and they said she wasn't there. So of course we got very scared and nervous. Several hours, as we were looking into the situation, several hours later, there was a ring, a doorbell rang, and lo and behold, there was my client in her chair. She traveled from either Ajax or Pickering all the way up to Bowmanville in her remote chair. She said one of the things that we had talked about was always keeping her big battery pack charged. And she did that because she knew one day she's going to have to leave. And she couldn't wait for the cab to come and get her. Her son had just left. And she thought this is the only chance. So she took back roads and she finally got to where we are. That's determination. There's also what we know as child abuse. If mom is being abused in any form or manner, trust me, the child is also being abused. And we need to look out for that. Child abuse is any form of, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual mistreatment, or a lack of care that causes injury or emotional damage to a child or the youth. The misuse of power and or a breach of trust are part of all types of child abuse. There's no excuse for it. So some of the things that as supporters, some of the things that we need to look at is this child bedwetting, or their bed is soiling, but there's no medical reason. Now, some children do go through a stage in their life where, and usually boys more than girls do, where they will constantly wet their bed, but they grow out of it after a while. They're still happy, they're just still jubilant, and they're just as upset as anyone else that they wet the bed. We're not talking about these children. We're talking about a child that gets up and is wetting their bed, soiling their bed, and they're afraid to even talk about it. If there's complaints of headaches, ongoing headaches, nausea, abdominal pain, if a child is constantly keeling over and my stomach is hurting me, I want to throw up. Throwing up is another big one. There's prolonged vomiting that doesn't go away and ongoing diarrhea. If you notice, let's say you're a teacher or you're a Sabbath school teacher, that this child is dressed differently from other children in their family. Maybe they're overdressed, maybe they're underdressed, maybe they have a long sleeve or they have turtleneck and it's hot outside. Question it. Other signs of abuse is if the child is suffering from severe developmental gaps. They're not developing in the stage that they should be. The child is 9 years old and is still acting as though they are 5. Their voice is very, very soft. That's a concern, especially if there's no medical reasons behind that. Maybe they're showing symptoms of depression and anxiety, withdrawal and aggression. They're always sad. They're always, looking timid, or they shake and startle when you raise your voice a little bit. There might be severe symptoms of self-destructive behaviors. Again, these are children that are crying out for help. Maybe they are cutting themselves, cutting their wrists, cutting their ankles. Maybe they're taking cigarette butts and they're burning themselves. And maybe they're always lashing out and yelling at people. throwing things, destroying things, biting, constantly biting. They're doing a lot of self-harm. They've attempted suicide, and now they're teenagers or preteens, and they're engaging in drugs, alcohol, or sexual misconduct. When at play, their behavior may be modeled or copied negatively. So they're looked at as these are negative behavior. And their language is inappropriate. So sometimes you might see one of these things. If you see a combination of them, those are some signs. Those are red flags. If a child constantly, if the abuser or the parent or the caregiver or the provider is always calling the child's name, labeling the child, publicly humiliating them, just like their mother, just like the other parent, continually threatening the child with physical harm and forcing the child to witness the physical harm inflicted on the loved one. It could be their parent, the other parent, or it could be another sibling. If the parent has unrealistic expectations of the child, it just doesn't match up with the child's age. If it involves the child in adult issues, talking about separation and access and talking about sexual acts with mom, or I told her not to do this, your mom is stupid, calling mom or dad names, keeps the child at home. If you're noticing that, listen, they're always keeping this child at home now. They don't want to have the child be around other children. These are all signs or red flags of concerns. Nonviolence and equality looks very much different. And we need to really reflect on what that looks like. When someone is saying, I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling agitated, I'm feeling sad, please learn to listen to them. When you notice that their mood is changing, or even that they're getting angry very quickly, or they're saying they're constantly tired and fatigued, these are all signs of depression. They lack focus. They're not thinking clearly. Have you seen any of your brother or sisters act in these ways or showing these symptoms? They're saying to you, I'm having difficulty sleeping. They're feeling sad. They might even start to say, God is not listening to me. I've been calling out for help. He's not listening to me. Ask them, what have you been asking? What's going on? Let's talk about this. Go in a private place. Give them your time. They say to you, I'm lacking motivation. I'm just not able to get up and do things anymore like I used to. I'm having negative thoughts and suicidal thoughts. I feel like I don't belong here anymore. Those are signs of depression. They're pouring their hearts out to you. They're saying that they're upset. They're feeling dizzy. They're having shortness of breath. They're saying their muscles feel tense and they're feeling like they're always having headaches. What's happening to our sisters and brothers? Are you listening to what they're saying? Because these are all now signs of emotional symptoms of anxiety. Or are you feeling this way? Are you feeling irritable or restless? Are you feeling tense? Are you always watching for danger? That's anxiety. Like your mind is racing and you just can't sit still. You can't calm it down. Now you can't sleep. And this is going on over and over. If they say I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm panicking, I'm having trouble breathing and I'm choking, I'm hyperventilating. I'm having unusual trembling and shaking. They're calling out for help. Anxiety attacks usually peak within 10 minutes, and they rarely last more than 30 minutes. So listen to those signs and pay attention. Now, during that short time, the terror can be so severe to that person that they feel as if they're about to die or totally lose control. So what can we do? We've talked about, the physical and the emotional and the psychological and the financial. We spoke about the children. We spoke about the elderly. What can you and I do? So we need to find ways to respond to abuse. And I hope as part of the women's ministry, you will talk about this. Find a safe and confidential place, as I said before, to talk with the person. Even to talk amongst yourselves, because you just never know who's in your group. Take the time to listen. And whatever the person say, please believe what they are expressing. We are so quick to judge as a community because we can't imagine that this is happening to this person. So be careful about the words we say. Learn to listen and believe them, trust them, give them the benefit of the doubt that they're not making this up, because in their mind, it's unreal as well. And it takes them a lot of guts to come out and say to you, something is wrong, I need help. Communicate that you care and be very patient with them. Remember, I told you in the beginning that I had to develop a sense of trust before I was welcomed in to help the women and the children, and in some instances, men who are being impacted by abuse. So be patient with them. Remind them that they're not crazy, that everything that they're saying, it's not in their mind. They're not crazy. Something is happening and it's not right. Tell them good things about themselves. Remember, who are you? You are a child of God. So therefore, remind them about all the positive things about themselves, because they've been hammered and hammered for years, for months, for a lifetime. Maybe it's from their fathers and their mother, from their siblings, and now their partner, and then their children. We don't know how long they've been abused, and so they have a different thought process about who they are. So it's important for us to say, this is the person I see in front of me. You're a wonderful person. You're a wonderful mother. You're such a caring person. So encourage them to build a wide support system. That's allowing them to know that they're not alone. Connect them to helplines, because you yourself can't do it by yourself. Remember, we all have to work as a nice, smooth, flowing system. Encourage them to find an exit plan. Tell them to avoid bathrooms when there's issues going on in the home and people are yelling and you're feeling like, okay, my body's telling me that there's a fight or flight response that's going to happen here. I have to run. I have to get away. Avoid the bathroom. Because once you're locked in and that person gets in, it's just the two of you in that closed environment. Avoid the kitchen. Anywhere where there's weapons, a knife is a weapon, a fork is a weapon, a spoon is a weapon, anything that they could throw at you. So try to avoid those places. Try to be in an open environment. Help them find shelter. Encourage the person to put aside, well, in the past, we would say cab money, but now make sure there is, you have a debit card with some cash on it. We used to say, put aside telephone fare, right? Make sure you have cash, or you have your debit card, or you have a Visa card with some money on it that he doesn't have access to. Put aside extra clothing. Allow them to know about that. They can keep some extra clothing at a family member's place. Some churches I know of actually keep extra food, extra clothing, baby food, diapers, pull-ups, you name it. They keep it there for women they know that may need it. So that's something that you can also consider putting aside um, for these women, because there'll come a time where they will need it. Make sure that their house or they have their house or their car keys available, or they have an extra copy, that they have their medication in a place that they can just grab it, or personal documents like your passport, birth certificate, immigration papers, vehicle documents, your bank card, your OHIP card, your SIN number, special toys for the kids and comfort toys for the children. They'll need it. What we do not say to them, we don't accuse a person who's come to you and shared that they're being harmed. Whether they're physically abused or emotionally abused or verbally abused, if they say they don't feel good about what's happening in their life and they're hurting, don't accuse them of anything. Don't tell them, well, what have you done? Don't blame them. And also, even when I am with someone outside of work, if I'm at church, if I'm in a community setting, I don't try to diagnose anyone. That's not my role. At that given time, I need to be a support. You need to be a support. We need to be a support. Don't judge them. Don't pressure the person to leave the abusive relationship. That's not your choice. There are times, I will say, and I've had the experience of doing this, where children were involved and mom specifically told me where the incidents happened. Not only did the child witness it, but the child was also harmed in the process. And so that's when I said, you have to leave, because now a minor is involved and I have to do due diligence. If you're not going to do it, I have to do it. So I've had to call the police. I've had to call Children's Aid. But outside of that, it is not your call to make those decisions. It is your call to walk them through it. And eventually they'll do the right thing. They'll do what they feel is best for them and for their family. Don't feel that you need to be the expert. I'm telling you a lot of things here, and some of you may be writing it down, but you don't have to be the expert. You have to be a good support. Do not try to provide counseling advice. That's not what they need. They need you to help them stop the violence by listening to them and supporting them. I hope that what I have shared with you is something you could take away and take the time to reflect on. For those of you that you are doing harm to others, remember again who you are. You must learn how to self-regulate. You must learn how to manage your emotions. You must learn to communicate and to listen to your partner without judgment, without yelling. You must learn to smile and breathe and maybe step aside for a moment if you think you're getting angry. You must remember that you have children that loves you, that cares about you, and you are making them afraid. You do not want them to be afraid because they will run away from you. You are held accountable. And as a church community, we're not going to abandon you, but we need to still support you. That is not going to take away from us being a support to those that are being abused. Let's take time, brothers and sisters, to really reflect on these words and to understand the value of support that is important to our community members, to our church fellows, to our friends, and even to each others. Who am I? Again, I am a child of God. You are a child of God. We are children of God. And God is our refuge and He's our strength. He's an everlasting present help when in trouble. That is my word for you today.
Amen.
Amen.
Sister Bulgin. Until she gets here, thank you, Sharon, for blessing us with your ministry this morning. Pray that God continues to strengthen you as you continue to do your will on His behalf. Sister Bulgin.
As Sister Bulgin is coming, we just wanted you to take note of some information that's in the chat and that's on the screen. Sister Sharon Clouden spoke about some very important information, and there's help out there for you to end it now. And she's provided some resources for us. So I'm hoping that everybody will take the time to write those down, if not for yourself, but for someone else or for a loved one.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of the Women's Ministry Department, I would like to say thank you to all the participants in the service this morning. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can.
Yeah. Well, on behalf of the Women's Ministry Department, I would like to say thank you to all the participants in the service this morning. And I would like to Joe, please turn it off. Joe, could you please turn it off? And I would like to. Yeah, sorry about that. As I was saying, I would like to say thanks to everybody who participated in the service today. And more so, I would like to say thank you to Sister Sharon Clouden Woods for her presentation. And I hope we were all blessed by the presentation and we learned something today. This evening at 6 o'clock, we will be continuing our women's ministry AY, and I hope as many as you will be able to attend. And there will be Bible class as usual at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us at Ajax SDA Community Church online presence via Zoom. Please remember that if you are in need of prayer, please call our 24-hour prayer line at 647-271-1173. If you would like Bible studies or are requesting baptism, please call our personal ministries leader at 416-999-3786. We would love to hear from you and appreciate your feedback about our sessions. Please email us at info@ajaxsda.com. Please remember to invite your friends and family members to log on to our sessions. We look forward to you joining us again, and may God continue to richly bless you and favor you until we meet again.